Good morning, batch 23. Your today's lecture topic is chronic and aggressive periodontitis. Learning outcomes. Learning outcomes for chronic periodontitis are: identify the etiological factors for chronic periodontitis, list 3 microorganisms concerned with chronic periodontitis, describe various clinical and radiographic features of chronic periodontitis, outline various treatment plan for chronic periodontitis. Learning outcomes for aggressive periodontitis. Classify aggressive periodontitis, explain the microbial etiology of aggressive periodontitis, discuss the clinical and radiographic features of aggressive periodontitis, outline the treatment modalities. Our understanding of the causes and pathogenesis of oral disease and conditions keeps on changing with increased scientific knowledge. In light of this fact, a classification can be most consistently defined by the differences in the clinical manifestations of disease and conditions. The current classification of periodontal disease is based on their extent, severity, rate of progression and localization. Chronic periodontitis, starting with definition, it is defined as inflammatory disease of supporting tissue of the teeth caused by specific microorganisms or group of specific microorganisms, resulting in progressive destruction of the periodontal ligament and alar bone with increased probing depth formation, recession or both. There are various classifications which has been used in previous times to classify the various forms of periodontitis, as classification given in 1989 by American Academy of Periodontology, which classified various forms of periodontitis as adult periodontitis, early onset periodontitis, periodontitis associated with systemic disease, necrotizing ulcerative periodontitis, refractory periodontitis. In 1993, European Workshop in Periodontology classified various forms of periodontitis as adult periodontitis, early onset periodontitis and necrotizing periodontitis. The current classification which we are using is 30% of teeth, but you have to mention which reference you are taking, either 10th edition Carranza or 13th edition Carranza. Chronic periodontitis is further subclassified based on severity as mild, moderate, severe. So when there is loss of attachment 1 to 2 mm, it is mild. When clinical attachment loss is 3 to 4 mm, it is moderate. When clinical attachment loss is 5 mm or more, it is severe. Chronic periodontitis is most common form of periodontitis. Intraoral radiographs along with periodontal charting records are one of the paramount importance to documentation of disease onset and rate of progression. Chronic periodontitis is associated with accumulation of plaque and calculus. It generally has slow to moderate rate of disease progression, but periods of more rapid destruction may also be observed. Depending upon their future compliance with home care and maintenance visits, patient may progress to periodontitis or maintain a healthy but reduced periodontium. The example highlights the importance of conceptualizing the dynamic nature of inflammatory disease that affects the periodontium. Stages of chronic periodontitis. The disease will progress in bursts of activity of unknown duration if untreated and can exist in active or inactive states, as stated by Person et al. In 1989. So there are two stages for chronic periodontitis. It can be stage of active or it can be stage of quiescence, that is inactive period. So chronic periodontitis is not a continuous disease process as other inflammatory or infectious disease. So if you see in this photograph, an analysis of more than 13,000 plaque samples has been undertaken using DNA hybridization methodology to define color-coded complex of periodontal microorganisms. The composition of the different complexes was based on the frequency with which different clusters of microorganisms were recovered, and the complexes were color-coded for easy conceptualization. So if you see here, these various complexes are known on the basis of the color. So this is red complex, this is green complex, and this is the blue complex. So all these microorganisms are related to periodontal health and disease. This is one more representation of the various clusters. So this is the red complex, which is associated with bleeding on probing, and this is the actinomyces species, which is more commonly associated with aggressive periodontitis. Risk factors for chronic periodontitis: it can be local factors, seismic factors, environmental and genetic factors. All these risk factors we have discussed already in chapter risk factors. Again, to just summarize, local factors can be primary red complex or plaque retentive factors, and seismic factors can be diabetes, which increase the severity and extent of periodontal disease. Environmental and behavioral factors can be there, such as smoking or emotional stress, and genetic factors, because some of the disease have genetic predisposition and a genetic basis is possible for the disease. This is how it was in starting, when there was only inflammation of the gingiva with no loss of attachment. Slowly, when inflammation increases and the severity of disease increases, there will be loss of attachment from this area, as can be seen here. So this is the area where loss of attachment has occurred, and here there is an increase in the size of the gingiva also. So there is a pocket formation which is caused by both increase in the size of the gingiva and loss of attachment. Because loss of attachment is there, this type of pocket is true pocket, which is seen in the periodontitis. Clinical features: probing depth measurement alone is inadequate. Clinical attachment losses is usually assessed because probing depth can be increased when there is pseudo pocket also, but in case of periodontitis there is loss of attachment, so we have to measure the base of the pocket and the distance from the CJ. If there is any loss of attachment, then only we will be calling it as periodontitis. The measurement of clinical attachment around a tooth provides insight on the history and extent of periodontal destruction around the tooth. One common pitfall of clinical periodontal examination is the direct translation of probing depth as clinical attachment levels when the gingival margin lies above the cemento-enamel junction, leading to an overestimation of attachment level. Diagnosis of chronic periodontitis: clinically, we have to use a periodontal probe to measure distance from the CJ to the base of the pocket. Radiographically, we can take a radiograph and see wherever bone loss is there, and we can see the bone morphology also. So to make radiographic diagnosis, we can take a bite wing, we can take an IOPA, or we can use an OPG also. If you want to do the IOPA, the radiographic survey should consist minimum of 14 intraoral films and 4 posterior bite wing films. So here you can see same pocket depth is there, but there is different amount of recession. So you can see here, this is the amount of the pocket depth, which is same in all the three A, B and C, but when we measure the distance from the CJ to the base of pocket, it varies significantly. So while measuring the loss of attachment, apart from measuring the distance from CJ to the base of the pocket, we have to measure the distance from the gingival margin to the CJ also, as you can see here. So according to you, which of these three have the maximum loss of attachment? The answer is C, because here the distance between the CJ to the base of the pocket is maximum. If you see here, the distance between the CJ to the base of pocket is same in all of these three, but because there is a variation in the height of the gingival margin, or the distance between the gingival margin to the CJ is different, the pocket depth varies. So in all these three, the loss of attachment is same. So this is a clinical image of a patient with chronic periodontitis. You can see that recession is here. Recession means loss of attachment, and when you insert probe there might be probing depth also, or both can be present as it has been described in the definition of chronic periodontitis. And when you see the radiographic image, you will see that bone loss is there and there is alteration in the bone morphology. You can see here that bone loss is here. You can see here bone loss is there. You can see here bone loss is there. See here bone loss is there. This bone loss can be vertical, horizontal, any type of bone loss can be there. See here bone loss is there. You can see it should be around 2 mm from the CJ, but it is more apically, so bone loss is there. You can see in all the teeth. With chronic periodontitis, severity and extent of periodontal destruction will occur over time in combination with seismic disorders, impairing or enhancing host response. Patients with chronic periodontitis experience a progression in attachment and bone loss as they become older. If untreated and oral hygiene behaviors remain unchanged, chronic periodontitis eventually leads to tooth loss and may negatively impact distant organs by uncontrolled progression of the disease. Chronic periodontitis is commonly a slowly progressing complex disease without a pain experience. Therefore, most patients are unaware that they have developed a chronic disease. Chronic periodontitis may develop at any time in life. First clinical signs of inflammation may occur even during adolescence when the oral hygiene is neglected and dental plaque and calculus were allowed to accumulate. In general, the progression rate of chronic periodontitis is slow, so that the symptoms of the disease may appear around the age of 40 or later in life. Onset and the rate of disease progression, however, may be influenced by numbers of modifiable factors such as smoking and diet, and some of the non-modifiable factors such as genetic disorders or risk factors. In this context, patients who develop a metabolic disorder such as diabetes mellitus may exhibit a much higher progression rate of chronic periodontitis, along with increased alveolar bone loss, periodontal bleeding and pocketing. As chronic periodontitis exhibits individual and heterogeneous progression patterns throughout the dentition, 3 different models have been proposed to describe the rate of disease progression and determine the degree of attachment loss over the time, which can be as follows: the continuous model, the random or episodic burst model, or the asynchronous multiple burst model. Speaking of prevalence of chronic periodontitis is considered to be one of the most common chronic diseases in humans, and the prevalence of disease increases with age equally in both genders. In general, 40% of patients with more than 50% of age and almost 50% of patients who are more than 65 years old show signs of mild to moderate periodontal destruction. The prevalence of severity and the forms of periodontitis also increases with age. In number of studies, it has been shown that prevalence of chronic periodontitis has been investigated in families, and it has been shown that one or more family members with periodontitis and there is association between them. So in this photograph, we are trying to show about the periodontal charting, where you will be probing all the teeth on different dates, and you will be mentioning the date here as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you will be putting the probing depth here, or if it is impacted you can put IMP, if it is unimpacted you will put UN, if it is extracted or missing you will put X, and if it has to be extracted this mark has to be given. So with the help of this you can see the both gingival margin and the distance between the CJ to the base of the pocket, and you can calculate the loss of attachment for a patient. See here how they have given. So gingival margin will be marked in the red line and the base of the pocket will be marked in the blue line. This is one of the example where you can see. This is online chart which is free, which is developed by University of Bern. The link will be shared after the lecture. Associated seismic conditions which can be associated with diabetes mellitus or cardiovascular disease such as angina, myocardial infarction, seismic or arterial hypertension and stroke. Other forms can be recurrent chronic peritonitis and refractory chronic peritonitis. Recurrent type of chronic peritonitis is that form of chronic peritonitis which keeps on recurring whenever we do the treatment. And refractory type of peritonitis is that type of peritonitis in spite of doing all the treatment and patient is following the good compliance and doing properly maintaining the good oral hygiene, still the disease progression is there or disease cannot be treated completely. That type of peritonitis is known as refractory peritonitis. Also, when you are doing this charting, this chart has to be done on the 6 sides per tooth. So this is only showing the buccal aspect of the maxillary teeth. Then it has to be done on the palatal aspect of the maxillary teeth, then the facial aspect of the mandibular teeth, and the lingual aspect of the mandibular teeth. Speaking of the treatment of chronic peritonitis can be treated effectively by a seismic periodontal therapy that includes optimal long-term plaque control, debridement of soft and hard deposits, or surgical pocket reduction, which can be case dependently, either resective osseous surgery or regenerative surgeries. And depending on the individual periodontal risk, each patient should be remotivated, reinstructed, and retreated if necessary during systemic supportive periodontal therapy regime, and patient should be recalled for the evaluation and maintenance program for every 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, which depends from patient to patient. Coming to aggressive peritonitis, the following characteristics are common to patients with aggressive peritonitis, otherwise clinically healthy patient, but you have to make a note of distinction when you are comparing the disease with the disease which is classified under peritonitis as a manifestation of seismic disease. There will be a rapid attachment loss and bone destruction. The familial aggregation of disease individual has been seen in the patient who have aggressive peritonitis. Some of the characteristics which are common but are not universal in the patient with aggressive peritonitis are amount of microbial deposit and inconsistent with disease severity. There is an increased level of Actinobacillus actinomycete committens. So when you read the new literature, this term Actinobacillus has been replaced with the term aggregative vector. So after this we will be calling it as AA, and the first A will be standing for the aggregative vector. There will be an abnormality in the phagocyte function. You will be seeing hyper responsiveness of the macrophages, and it will be producing increased prostaglandin and interleukin. In some cases it can be self-arresting also. Aggressive peritonitis may be further subclassified on the basis of the localization. So for the localization, it can be localized form and the generalized form. In localized form, there will be a circumpubertal onset of the disease. It will localize first molar or incisor disease with proximal attachment loss on one or at least 2 permanent teeth, one of which is a first molar, and robust serum antibody response to infective agents will be seen. In generalized form of aggressive peritonitis, usually affecting person under 30 years of age, however patient can be older also, generalized proximal attachment loss affecting at least 3 teeth other than first molar and incisor. There will be a pronounced episodic nature of periodontal destruction, and poor serum antibody response to infecting agent will be seen. So you can see here in this radiograph of patient who is suffering from aggressive peritonitis. If you see, there is very less bone loss in the adjacent side, but severe bone loss in this, and this type of bone loss is called as arc-shaped bone loss, because you can see a crescent or arc is formed around the 6. So this is one of the typical feature of aggressive peritonitis seen radiographically, arc-shaped bone loss. Common findings for aggressive peritonitis: patient will be less than 30 years of age and patient will be clinically healthy. It is characterized by rapid bone and loss and attachment loss, and the bone loss and attachment loss is inconsistent with the amount of destruction and the presence there will be absence of large amounts of plaque and calculus. There can be a family history, and which can be shown by the familial aggregation suggestive of genetic trait of the disease. Both of them now we have put side by side. So circumpubertal onset will be seen in lab, and in the generalized form it will be affecting person under 30 years of age, but can affect older also. So localized first molar or incisor presentation will be there. In this, generalized interproximal attachment loss will be there, which will be affecting at least 3 permanent teeth other than first molars and incisors. Robust serum antibody response to infective agent will be seen. Poor serum antibody response to infective agents will be seen. AA, so aggregative vector actinomycete committens is found in the disease site. Host response abnormalities will be seen. Hyperactive macrophages will be there. Disease may be self-arresting. Clinical feature of localized aggressive periodontitis. It was formerly known as localized juvenile periodontitis. Onset of disease occurs between puberty and 20 years of age. Bone loss is 3 to 4 times more faster when compared to chronic periodontitis, and attachment loss affects mainly first molars and incisors. Clinical inflammation may not be obvious when in the patients with localized form of aggressive periodontitis. Minimal plaque is seen that rarely mineralizes. However, there will be elevated levels of aggregative vector actinomycete committens and P. gingivalis. Maxillary incisors migrate in distolabial direction, that might cause diastema also. There will be increasing mobility of affected teeth. Periodontal abscess formation may be seen, and root surface will be sensitive. Rapid and severe loss of alveolar bone around more than one permanent tooth, usually the first molar and incisors. It is characterized by interproximal attachment loss on at least 2 permanent first molars and incisors, with attachment loss on no more than 2 teeth other than first molars and incisors. Frequently, this disease is localized to permanent molars and incisors. It occurs in otherwise healthy children and adolescents without clinical evidence of systemic disease. Patients have little or no tissue inflammation and very little supragingival dental plaque or calculus. Clinical photograph also. Initially, there is bone loss in the maxillary and mandibular incisor of first molar area, usually bilaterally, resulting in a vertical arc-like destructive pattern, which is known as arc-shaped bone loss. As the disease progresses, loss of alveolar bone may become generalized but remains less pronounced in the premolar areas. So this is a pictomicrograph of aggregative vector actinomycete committens. The reason for site-specific destruction is, first one is aggregative vector actinomycete committens colonize first permanent teeth to rib, so it evades host defenses. Following initial attack, host response and antibodies are produced which improve phagocytosis of bacteria, and this may prevent the colonization of the other sites. Second is that AA may lose its ability to produce leukotoxin. Third is there can be antagonistic bacteria might be there which localize the infection and tissue destruction. And fourth can be denuded root surfaces. The root surfaces of patients with localized aggressive periodontitis are often denuded, that is absence of cementum, which allows bacteria to penetrate the roots and colonize the site. So this is a radiograph which is showing the bone loss at the distal aspect of mandibular first molar in a 15-year-old girl. You can see here on your left side, this was taken in the initial stage, but when you compare in this photograph which was taken 1 year later, the extent of bone loss is so severe in very less time, that is in 1 year. So this is a typical feature of aggressive type of bone loss, where the severity and progression of the bone loss is very fast, and you can see there are very less local factors, and there is hardly any mineralization of the local factors, that there is no calculus can be seen here, because when plaque mineralizes it becomes calculus, and calculus is radio opaque, which can be seen on the radiograph. So if you see here, local factors are not that much which might cause so much of the destruction of the bone. Genetic defects in localized aggressive periodontitis patients. So there can be neutrophil chemotactic defects. The function of the neutrophil is thought to be clearance of infecting organisms and other noxious substances, but the abnormality of chemotaxis in localized aggressive periodontitis is characterized by a decrease in the rate of cell migration in response to chemotactic gradient. Radiographic evaluation of the patients. Vertical bone loss affecting. So usually bilateral effect will be seen, which will be affecting mainly the permanent first molar and the incisors. Vertical bone loss will be seen as an arc shape, which will be extending from the distal of the second premolar to the mesial of the second molar. Coming to clinical features of generalized aggressive periodontitis, limited information is available due to the reclassification of conditions. It includes the condition formerly known as generalized juvenile periodontitis and rapidly progressive periodontitis. It usually affects the persons who are 30 years and younger, but can affect older person also. Bone and attachment loss affects at least 3 teeth other than the first molar and incisors. Episodic nature to disease may be seen. There will be periods of inactivity which may last weeks, months or years also. Often plaque is minimal, but it contains high level of aggregative actinomycete commitans, Porphyromonas gingivalis, Fusobacterium nucleatum, and Clostridium recti and spirochetes. Episodic nature of disease produces 2 different tissue responses. It can be destructive phase or non-destructive phase. In destructive phase, tissue appears severely inflamed, ulcerated and fiery red. Bleeding will be there with or without stimulation. Suppuration can be seen. Active attachment and bone loss will be there. In non-destructive phase, tissue appears pink and some stippling can be seen. Lack of inflammation will be there. Probing will reveal deep pockets. Bone and attachment levels are relatively stable as compared to the destructive phase. Associated systemic complications. Some patients with generalized aggressive periodontitis may exhibit weight loss, mental depression and general malaise also. Systemic conditions which can predispose to generalized aggressive periodontitis are chronic neutrophil defects or leukocyte adherence deficiency. Functional defect of PMNs and monocytes or both are also seen, which will cause impaired chemotaxis and phagocytosis. Coming to the primary dentition and the effect of aggressive periodontitis on primary dentition, there is little evidence which is available as of now concerning the prevalence of aggressive periodontitis affecting the primary dentition. It should be emphasized that the periodontitis affecting the primary dentition does not necessarily mean the presence of an aggressive form of periodontitis, but may indicate a chronic form of disease with relative abundance of local factors, that is plaque and calculus. So this is a photograph of localized type of aggressive periodontitis. You can see here the teeth which are affected mainly are the molars and the incisors. Local factors are less. Patient is otherwise clinically healthy and patient is of young age also, as you can see in clinical photographs. Bone loss is severe in the sixes as compared to the other sides. You can see here. See. Determinant of virulence and pathogenic potential of aggregative actinomycete commitans. This table is not given in Carranza. If you want to read more about this, you have to read Linde. So factor can be leukotoxin, endotoxin, bacteriocin, immunosuppressive factors, collagenase and chemotactic inhibition factors. And their significance given on the right side, as leukotoxin will destroy human polymorphonuclear leukocytes and macrophages. Endotoxin, they will activate host cell to secrete inflammatory mediators as prostaglandins and interleukin and TNF alpha. Bacteriocin may inhibit growth of beneficial species. Immunosuppressive factors may inhibit IgG and IgM production. Collagenase may cause degradation of collagen, and chemotactic inhibition factors may inhibit neutrophil chemotaxis. Coming to the treatment part of localized aggressive peritonitis, the patients with early onset forms of peritonitis, that is aggressive peritonitis, these type of patient often have a high level of aggregative bacter actinomycete commitans in their subgingival plaque, and this organism has been associated with infective endocarditis also. And if this patient is resistant to penicillin, while trying to give the antibiotic to the patient suffering from aggressive peritonitis, and if patient is resistant to penicillin, we can give 250 milligram of tetracycline 4 times daily for 14 days to eliminate or reduce aggregative vector actinomycete commitans, and which can be followed by the conventional prophylaxis protocol at the time of dental treatment. Because patients diagnosed with aggressive peritonitis and some other atypical forms of periodontal disease, they often do not respond as predictably or favorably to the conventional therapy. Fortunately, only a small percentage of patients with such type of disease are diagnosed. So therapeutic modalities. Early detection is critically important in the treatment of aggressive peritonitis, whether it can be generalized or localized, because prevention of further destruction is often more predictable than regeneration of lost supporting tissue. Therefore, at the initial diagnosis, it is helpful to obtain any previously taken radiograph to assess the rate of progression of the disease. Together with future radiograph, this documentation also facilitates the clinician's assessment of treatment success and control of disease. Treatment of aggressive peritonitis must be pursued with a logical and regimented approach. Overall, patients with generalized aggressive peritonitis tend to have a poorer prognosis because they typically have more teeth affected by the disease, and the disease is less likely to go into remission spontaneously compared with localized form of aggressive peritonitis. Although the potential for regeneration in patients with aggressive peritonitis appears to be good, expectations are limited for patients with severe bone loss. This is especially true if the bone loss is horizontal or progressed into furcation. Periodontal regenerative procedures have been successfully demonstrated in patients with localized aggressive peritonitis in some of the clinical case reports. So it is suggested that several factors are there which will be contributing to the success of the cases, which can include transition of the disease activity from aggressive to chronic, tooth stabilization before surgery, and sound surgical management of hard and soft tissue, and good post-operative care. When planning for conventional periodontal therapy, because aggressive periodontitis is primarily bacterial infection, initial treatment is comparable to treatment rendered for chronic periodontitis. Conventional periodontal therapy for aggressive periodontitis consists of patient education, oral hygiene improvement, scaling and root planning, and regular recall maintenance. It may or may not include flap surgery. However, the response of aggressive periodontitis to conventional therapy alone may be limited or less predictable. Patients who are diagnosed with aggressive periodontitis at an early stage and are able to enter therapy may have a better outcome than those who are diagnosed at an advanced stage of destruction. Patients who are diagnosed with aggressive periodontitis at an early stage and who are able to enter therapy may have better outcome. So this is the classification of periodontal and peri-implant disease and conditions given in 2017. This classification has to be implemented in our dental school. So as soon as it gets implemented, this classification will be used for the diagnosis of the periodontal disease. But until this classification is is used or implemented, you are still going to use only the 1999 classification, which we have discussed already. So this classification was basically was developed jointly by the American Academy of Paleontology and the European Federation of Paleontology, which is AAP and EEP. This classification soft note has been already given to all of you to read and discuss with us. If you have any doubt or any confusion regarding that, you can come back to Department of Paleontology. So speaking of periodontitis, it has been classified on various stages, which can be stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 and stage 4. So stage 1 is initial periodontitis, stage 2 is moderate periodontitis, stage 3 is severe periodontitis with potential for additional tooth loss, and stage 4 is severe periodontitis with potential loss for dentition. Speaking of extent and distribution, and so extent of distribution according to new classification can be localized, generalized or molar incisor distribution. So they have tried to merge both chronic and aggressive periodontitis together in one classification, which will be periodontitis. So more or less this molar incisor distribution is localized type of aggressive periodontitis. Then they have done the grading also, which is based on the evidence or risk of rapid progression and anticipated treatment responses, which can be slow rate of progression, moderate rate of progression and rapid rate of progression. Again, describing the localized and generalized, it will be less than 30% of sites will be localized, more than 30% site will be generalized. Risk progression, when you have to assess, you have to assess it directly by evidence of the radiographs and the clinical attachment loss, or it can be indirect, which can be calculated by the bone loss divided by the age ratio. Anticipated treatment response depends upon the case phenotype, smoking and hyperglycemia. So from this link you can see the new classification of the periodontal disease. So suggested protocol for the comprehensive and total rehabilitation starts with the maintenance therapy after the first phase has been done. So followed by that, surgical periodontal therapy can be there, in which open flap debridement can be done, which can be modified Widman, circular incision flap or papilla precision flap. There can be open flap debridement with resective surgery to eliminate the pockets. There can be open flap debridement with regenerative therapy, which includes placement of grafts, GTR, biological modifiers, growth factors and combination of all these factors. Speaking of interdisciplinary therapy, it can be combined with orthodontic also, and if the tooth loss is there, you can go for the prosthetic rehabilitation. Implants and implant supported prosthesis can also be used. Speaking of non-surgical therapy, first thing to be done is control of modifiable risk factors, that is mechanical and chemical plaque control. Smoking cessation is must for the patient. Then you can go for the antimacular therapy, in which mechanical scaling and planning will be done, and adjuvant systemic and antibiotic therapy can be started. Local drug delivery can be started. Photodynamic therapy can be started. Laser irradiation also can be done, and also psychotherapy can also be done. To read more detail about the protocol for the comprehensive and total rehabilitation for the treatment of the aggressive type of periodontitis, you can go to this link where this diagram is there and all of these factors have been described in detail. Speaking of aggressive periodontitis, antibiotics use is recommended for the greatest benefit. The therapeutic level of antibiotics should be achieved by the time scaling and root planning are completed, and the optimal antibiotics has not been identified, but they can be used with limited benefit also. Initially, the use of dental implant was suggested for and implemented in patients with periodontitis with much caution because of unfounded fear of bone and implant loss. However, there are evidences which supports the use of dental implants in this type of patient. Successful management of aggressive periodontitis must include tooth replacement as part of treatment plan. In some advanced cases, the overall treatment success for the patients may be enhanced if severely compromised teeth are extracted, the outcome of treatment for these teeth is limited, and more important, the retention of severely diseased teeth over time may result in additional bone loss and teeth that are further compromised. The risk of further bone loss is an even greater concern now with the current success and predictability of dental implants and the desire to preserve bone for implant placement. Any additional alveolar bone loss in area that has already undergone severe bone loss may further compromise residual anatomy and impair the opportunity for tooth replacement with a dental implant. In the patient with aggressive periodontitis, the approach to restorative treatment should be chosen based on single premise, that is, extract severely compromised teeth early and plan treatment to accommodate future tooth loss. The teeth with best prognosis should be identified and considered when planning the restorative treatment. The lower cuspid and first premolars are typically more resistant to loss, probably because of the favorable anatomy, that is, they are single rooted tooth and they do not have furcation, and easier access for oral hygiene. As a rule, an extensive fixed prosthesis should be avoided, and the removable partial denture should be planned in such a way as to allow for addition of teeth. Speaking of the antibiotics which can be used, the use of amoxicillin and metronidazole as an adjunctive therapy to scaling and root planning for the treatment of aggressive periodontitis has been shown to significantly improve clinical attachment gain and pocket depth reduction when compared with scaling and root planning alone. So this is how systemic tetracycline can be used in treatment of aggressive periodontitis. We have already spoken if patient how to give the penicillin or a patient who is resistant to penicillin. So this dosage can be given. Systemic tetracycline can be given 250 milligram dosage 4 times daily for at least 1 week in conjunction with the local mechanical therapy. If surgery is indicated, systemic tetracycline should be prescribed and the patient should be instructed to begin taking it approximately 1 hour before surgery. Doxycycline 100 mg per day may be used instead of tetracycline. Chlorhexidine rinses should be prescribed and continued for several weeks to enhance plaque control and facilitate healing. Thank you. So if you have any doubt or any query regarding this lecture, you can always come back to us. Department of Periodontology will be happy to clarify your doubts and queries. Stay safe and thank you.